Welcome to the Telltales channel.
My sister's 11-year-old son spit into my plate at dinner and said, "Dad says you deserve it." I grabbed my bag and left. That night I got a text from my brother, "You're no longer welcome." I replied, "But neither is my money. Payments stop in the morning." 12 hours later he screamed. I never imagined an 11-year-old spitting in my food would be the least shocking thing that night. Nick and Hannah were celebrating 15 years of being married, and they made sure everyone knew it. Balloons, fancy catered food, little custom napkins with their initials printed on them, the kind of thing you'd expect from people trying to convince others and maybe themselves that everything was perfect. I wasn't thrilled about going, but I showed up. Always do. Nick is my brother, and whether I liked it or not, we'd been tangled together for years. Mostly because of the business. He likes to pretend it's his company too. Technically he has a stake. A small one. I gave it to him years ago when I thought it'd be nice to keep things in the family. It was my idea, my work, my money that built it. Nick was just the guy I let sit at the table. And over time he started acting like he built the damn table. The more successful we got, the more entitled he became. He started asking about my house, the second one I bought near the lake, making comments about how someone single doesn't need that much space. Then last month he straight up asked me if I'd ever thought about transferring the deed to him, since I don't have kids and probably never will. I laughed, said no, and watched his face twitch in a way that told me he wasn't joking. But I wasn't prepared for what happened at that dinner. The dining room was full. Our parents were there, some extended family, Nick's wife's side too. Carter, Nick's 11-year-old son, sat next to me. He's always been a bit much. Spoiled, loud, no boundaries, but that night he was on another level. While people were still chatting and settling in, I started filling my plate. Out of nowhere, Carter leaned over, spit directly into it, then shoved it back toward me and said, "Dad says you deserve it." It didn't even sound like a kid repeating something. It sounded rehearsed. Everything stopped. Everyone heard it. Everyone saw it. And no one did a damn thing. There wasn't a single Carter apologize. "No, Nick, what the hell is going on?" My mother glanced at me like I'd just knocked over a glass. My dad kept eating. Hannah smiled. Nick didn't even look embarrassed, he actually looked satisfied. I stood up, grabbed my purse, walked out and drove home. No shouting. No tears. Just a cold, clean exit. At 10:08 that night Nick sent me a text. "You're no longer welcome in this house." It was short, smug and pathetic. But it didn't hit me like he thought it would. I replied right away. "But neither is my money. Payments stop in the morning." No response. I turned off my phone and tried to sleep, but I couldn't stop thinking about Carter. The way he said it, the smirk, the pride in it. It wasn't just a bratty move. That was something taught. What I didn't know was that my message hit harder than expected. 12 hours later Nick screamed. Not at me. Not online. But outside one of my shops around 6:20 in the morning. And he wasn't there to talk. I woke up before the sun. Didn't need the alarm. My body was already on high alert, even if I didn't know why yet. My phone had over 20 missed calls, mostly from numbers I didn't save. I tapped on the most recent one and listened to my manager's voice, low and fast. "Monica, he's here. Outside the shop." Yelling. It got me moving. I opened the app connected to the front camera feed. There he was. Nick, pacing up and down the sidewalk in front of the storefront in broad daylight. His face was red, his arms flailing, shouting things I couldn't quite make out over the street noise. Cars slowed down. One woman crossed to the other side of the street to avoid him. My manager had locked the door, but Nick wasn't trying to come in. He just wanted an audience. And he had one. People were watching, recording, whispering. I didn't even flinch. Let him scream. At exactly 6:03 a.m., every automatic payment connected to his bank account had stopped. He would have found out when the food supplier refused delivery, or maybe when his wife asked why the kids' tuition hadn't gone through. I watched him rage on the sidewalk like a man whose whole life had been stolen, because that's exactly how he saw it. He thought the money was his. For years I'd been supplementing their life quietly. Covering the gaps, smoothing over the cracks, handling everything behind the scenes so no one would have to know Nick was just a name on a document, not a real contributor. But once he allowed his son to disrespect me like that, and worse, once I saw how proud he was of it, everything shifted. That one moment at the table had peeled the mask off. He didn't just dislike me. He resented me. He believed my success was his to claim. That because I didn't have a husband or kids, my money should serve his family. He'd been grooming his son to believe it too. Carter's little act at the dinner table wasn't spontaneous. It was inherited. By 9:30 a.m. I was getting messages from family. "Monica, you can't just cut him off like this. He's your brother. You're being emotional." My father called 4 times. My mother sent me a long message telling me I was letting money change me. Not one person asked about what had happened at the table. Not one person said Carter was wrong. They wanted me to be quiet, to make peace, to keep paying. Around 10:45, Nick texted me again. You think you can walk away from your family? You wouldn't even have this business if it weren't for me. That was rich. The truth was, he barely knew what the business even looked like anymore. He hadn't set foot in an office in 8 months. He didn't know we were pivoting operations, changing suppliers, restructuring 2 of our biggest contracts. But he still cashed the checks. Still took the credit at family events. Still acted like he was co-founder instead of the deadweight I'd been carrying for too long. I texted him once. This is done. No more money. No more involvement. Don't contact me again unless it's through a lawyer. He didn't respond right away. But I knew he wouldn't let it go. Nick's pride was paper-thin and now it had been shredded. He'd lost control of the narrative. And worse, he'd lost the one thing he never thought I'd pull, the money. That night I made dinner, poured a glass of wine, and sat down to watch the outdoor feed of the shop one more time. Everything looked normal. Quiet street. Closed sign. Lights off. What I didn't know was that Nick had already driven by twice that evening. Once at 7:50. Again at 9:10. Just slow drives past the building. At 1:38 a.m., a figure walked up to the back alley of the shop, wearing a hoodie and a mask. What Nick didn't know was that I had a second camera. One he didn't know existed. Not connected to the shop's main security system. Something I installed last year after a string of break-ins nearby. It wasn't visible from the alley. And that little lens, tucked behind a false vent cover across the street, caught everything. Including the moment Nick pulled off the mask, looked around and walked away as smoke started rising behind him. At 2:04 a.m. the call came through. A fire alarm at the back entrance of my downtown shop. The voice on the other end from the security company was calm, as if reading from a checklist, but I sat up in bed like someone had punched me in the chest. A fire. They said the fire department had already been dispatched. I didn't waste time asking questions. I threw on jeans, grabbed my coat and was out the door in under 5 minutes. I didn't even brush my hair. By the time I reached the street, the flashing red and blue lights were already painting the buildings. Smoke curled lazily from the back of the store, but the fire was out. 2 fire trucks. 4 firefighters. A few neighbors, wide-eyed, standing barefoot in coats. The flames hadn't spread. The sprinkler system and fast response kept the damage minimal. Some scorched boxes, charred walls in the back corridor, and the strong smell of smoke now embedded into every inch of the place. But that wasn't the point. Someone had tried to burn it down. The back door had been forced open. They'd used some kind of accelerant. The firefighters found traces of lighter fluid and an empty bottle of something flammable nearby. It was arson, clear and deliberate. But even as they spoke, I wasn't really hearing them. My mind had already gone somewhere else. I didn't need a name. I already knew. I waited until I got home before checking the hidden camera feed. The second one. The one nobody knew about. It was mounted in an old vent casing on the building across the alley. Something I installed privately after a series of break-ins in the neighborhood last year. It wasn't connected to the shop's main system, so even Nick wouldn't know it existed. At 1:38 a.m. someone appeared on the footage. Hoodie, mask, gloves, carrying a bag. They moved fast, knew where the blind spots were. This wasn't random. Then the moment. He stopped at the far corner close to the dumpster, looked around and pulled down the mask. Just for a second. Maybe he needed air. Maybe he thought no one could see him there. But I saw him. Nick, my brother. Not a shadow. Not a resemblance. His full face, lit by the faint glow of the security light over the back exit. He stood there alone, looking down at the ground like he was debating something. Then he walked away, mask back on. And behind him, smoke started to rise. It took me less than 30 minutes to be at the police station. I didn't wait until morning. I didn't call anyone. I didn't send a warning text. I just went. The officer on duty watched the footage with a straight face. Rewound it. Watched again. He asked me if I wanted to press charges. I said yes, absolutely. He didn't ask why my brother would do something like this. I think he could already tell this wasn't sudden. This wasn't heat of the moment. This was slow, bitter resentment finally erupting into something physical. I gave them everything, copies of the footage, the timestamps, a statement. They said they'd issue the warrant in the morning. But Nick didn't make it that far. By 11:10 a.m. he was already in cuffs. Picked up at home. No drama, no shouting. Just a quiet arrest in front of his wife and kids. Hannah texted me at noon. "What the hell are you doing? He's your brother." I didn't respond. By 2 p.m. the rest of the family knew. The cousins. The uncles. The parents, of course. That's when the calls started. No one asked if I was okay. No one asked if I got hurt, if the shop was damaged, if the staff was safe. Instead, I got these. "You really called the cops on your own brother?" Monica, this is going too far. He's always had a temper. You know that. He didn't really burn it down, did he? The shop smelled like chemical smoke and soaked drywall. The cleanup was going to take weeks. But none of them cared. In their eyes, I should have just swallowed it. Should have let it slide. Should have protected him. Because apparently being born into the same bloodline is more important than someone trying to burn your life down. Nick spent his first night in a holding cell while my phone nearly exploded. Missed calls from my mother, texts from cousins I hadn't heard from in years, 2 voicemails from Hannah. The first one quiet and frantic, the second one cold and clipped. No one asked if I was alright. Not a single message about the fire or whether the shop was salvageable. It was all about him. How could I do this to my brother? Why did I go to the police? Did I really want him to go to jail over a mistake? And then there was the one message from my dad. Just 6 words. You made this into a mess. By 10 a.m. Nick had been officially charged. 3 counts. Attempted arson, property damage and unlawful entry. The judge didn't grant immediate bail. Apparently he showed up in court looking smug, like it was all just some misunderstanding that would blow over once I came to my senses. Except I didn't. Around noon something happened I didn't expect. Hannah showed up at my office. She walked right in like she still had the right. I was in the middle of a vendor meeting mid-sentence, when my assistant knocked and whispered, "Hannah's here." She looked tired. Not angry, just worn down. Like someone who hadn't slept and was now stuck cleaning up a mess she didn't expect to get this big. She didn't even greet me. He just said, "Monica, please, we need to talk." I followed her out into the hallway. She didn't ask how I was. Didn't bring up the dinner. Or Carter. Or the fact that I had just watched her husband on camera trying to burn down my business. She said they were in a bad place financially. That Nick was spiraling. That this wasn't who he was. He said the kids were asking questions. She said it would destroy them if I didn't drop the charges. But what got me most was when she said quietly, "Maybe you could walk this back. Do it privately. I mean, you've made your point." That's when I realized she still didn't get it. This wasn't about money. Or revenge. Or family shame. It was about a line that got crossed. A very clear one. I told her the same thing I told the officer. I wanted full legal action. No negotiations. Hannah left without saying goodbye. Just turned and walked off, heels echoing down the hallway. But the real twist came later that night. My lawyer called me uneasy. He said he'd been contacted by a separate attorney. Not Nick's, not Hannah's. My parents had hired one. They weren't suing. Not yet. But they wanted to discuss options regarding Nick's stake in the business. I didn't even need to ask what that meant. I already knew. Nick had been poisoning the well for months. Whispering lies to them. Telling them I was unstable. That I was planning to sell the company out from under the family. That I was manipulating finances. That I'd shut him out unfairly. And now that he was sitting in a jail cell with arson charges, my parents were scrambling to protect their image. They wanted me to walk it back, bury the charges, let Nick go to therapy and rebuild trust. They even hinted at a financial settlement. I would pay him to step away quietly. It was beyond insulting. I told my lawyer one thing. We go forward with everything. Not just pressing charges but moving to dissolve his stake. They had underestimated me for too long. That night I took a drive to the lake house. Alone. No music. Just silence. I walked through the empty rooms, stared out at the water and let myself feel it. Not just the betrayal but the relief. The masks were off. I finally saw them all for who they really were. The family wasn't trying to fix anything. They were trying to keep their names clean. Their hands clean. While mine were still shaking from smoke damage. Nick, he was just the weapon. But I was done playing the target. I walked into the courtroom without any nerves. I'd burned through all that weeks ago. By the time Nick's case was called, I wasn't even angry anymore. Just tired. He looked thinner than usual, almost gaunt, like the walls were finally closing in. Still tried to hold himself with some fake dignity, like he wasn't standing there because he tried to set a fire at 2 a.m. He didn't look at me once. I was seated behind the prosecution, calm, silent. Hannah showed up alone, sat in the back like she didn't want to be seen. She didn't speak to me. Didn't even glance my way. When the judge read the charges, attempted arson, unlawful entry, property damage, I watched Nick's eyes shift slightly, like maybe for the first time he realized this wasn't just some argument between siblings. It was real. And he had crossed a line no one comes back from. His lawyer tried to make a case about stress, family tensions, blurred boundaries. He called it an emotional lapse in judgment. But the footage said otherwise. Calculated. Nick pled guilty. Probably thought it would get him sympathy or leniency. Instead, the judge gave him exactly what the DA had requested. 3 months in county jail, plus full restitution and a restraining order that barred him from contacting me or coming within 200 feet of any of my homes or businesses. He stood there as the gavel came down and I finally realized something. He still didn't get it. Nick wasn't sorry. He was cornered. As I left the courthouse, my phone buzzed again and again. Family members who hadn't said a word to me during the entire process were suddenly wide awake. My mother, my aunt, even 2 cousins from out of state. They weren't reaching out in support. They were furious. You didn't have to go that far. You could have just talked to him. He's your brother, Monica. That's when it hit me. This whole time they had been waiting for me to back down. Not once had any of them said, he should have never done that. Not one. They weren't interested in justice or accountability. They were just uncomfortable with consequences. Later that evening, I got a message from one of Nick's friends. A guy I used to work with during the early days of the business. He said, "Thought you should know Nick was telling people the company was rightfully his. Said you stole it out from under him years ago." I didn't even reply. I just added it to the growing pile of poison he'd been spreading. Even from the inside of a jail cell, he was still rewriting history to make himself the victim. The restitution payment came 2 weeks later. It was a little over $8,000. Enough to cover cleanup and repair costs, not including the revenue we lost during those 2 weeks of closure. I donated the entire amount anonymously to a fire safety education program for public schools. A week after that, my lawyer filed the final paperwork. Nick's name was officially removed from the business. No more stake. No more percentages. No more say. He was out. Fully. Legally. Permanently. And then the last thing I expected happened. My father showed up at my door. I hadn't seen him in person since the night of the dinner. He looked older. Unsteady. He asked if we could talk. I let him in. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to hear what he would say when forced to look me in the eyes. He didn't apologize. Didn't mention the fire. Didn't ask how I was. He just sat there and said, "I think you've made things harder than they needed to be." I said nothing. He told me Mom hadn't been sleeping. That she blamed me for how far it had gone. That Hannah was struggling with the kids. Then he asked me something I'll never forget. Was it worth it? And in that moment I knew. They had never seen me as a person. Just a resource. A wallet. A fixer. A problem solver who should have smiled and taken the insult, the sabotage, and the fire, just to keep the family together. I told him the truth. It wasn't worth it. But it was necessary. He left without saying goodbye. I never saw him again after that. Nick got out 2 weeks early for good behavior. That's what Hannah said in a voicemail I didn't ask for. I didn't listen to the whole thing, just the part where she said, "Maybe now we can all move forward." I didn't return the call. There was nothing to move toward. After 3 months in county, Nick came home to a different world. No job, no stake in the business, no reputation left outside the family circle. But even then, even after everything, the narrative never changed. He was just in a bad place. He made a poor choice. He'd suffered enough. But I was the one who had gone too far. I was the one who had made things irreparable. It started small, missed invitations, group chats suddenly silent. Then it got louder. I heard from a friend of a cousin that my mother had told people I was becoming difficult to understand lately. That grief over being single was changing me. That one stuck. They still couldn't admit the truth even to themselves. It was easier to say I snapped than to say their son tried to set my business on fire. I watched holidays come and go in silence. I wasn't invited to Thanksgiving. I wasn't called at Christmas. I sent a gift to my niece, not Carter, and got no reply. Eventually I stopped trying. I moved the business into a new phase. Opened a second location in a different part of the city. Rebranded. Quietly cut off a few suppliers that were too close to Nick. I built everything back better, stronger, more insulated. And I let the door to my past slowly shut behind me. But then, a few weeks ago, something strange happened. One of Nick's old friends, a guy named Travis who used to help with some back-end work in the early years, reached out. Said he was cleaning out an old laptop and found something Nick had sent him years ago. A folder of files. Financial records, private emails, even altered contracts with timestamps that didn't match. It wasn't just harmless venting. It was proof that Nick had been plotting to push me out of the company long before the dinner, long before the fire. The fake story he told my parents about me planning to sell the company behind his back? He'd actually forged a few drafts of fake emails to support it. He planned it all. Months before Carter spat in my plate. This wasn't impulsive. It wasn't a breakdown. It was methodical. And all this time I had only known half of it. I forwarded everything to my attorney not because I planned to sue, but to file it, to document it, to keep it in a folder labeled just in case. But it did something else too. It cleared the last fog. For a long time, even after everything, some part of me still questioned whether I'd gone too far. Whether I could have handled it differently. Whether there was a version of this story where I got to keep my family. Now I knew, that version never existed. I didn't lose my family because I changed. I lost them because I refused to keep playing the role they had written for me. The one who paid without question. The one who never said no. The one who smiled through every insult and called it love. No more. Nick can tell whatever version of the story he wants. He can twist it, soften it, flip it inside out. But the truth, the real truth, lives in court documents, security footage, and in the scorched door of a shop he tried to burn down. Me. I'm rebuilding. The business is stronger than ever. My team is loyal, tight-knit, and protective. I'm planning to open a third location next year. This time out of state. Fresh start. Clean slate. And my family? They've made it clear where they stand. Every silence, every avoided call, every passive-aggressive message was just another way of saying, we won't stand with you if it means standing against him. So I stopped waiting for them to understand. You don't need a family that only loves you when you're convenient. You need people who love you when you set the fire alarm, not when you sit quietly in the smoke. I lost my family. But I found peace. The update. Last week I hosted a soft opening for the new shop. The third location out of state. Just a small event, no press, just the team and a few locals who've supported us from the start. It was calm. Simple. No speeches. No drama. And for the first time in a long time I looked around and didn't feel like something was missing. No fake smiles. No under-the-table insults. No tension creeping in under the surface. Just people who showed up because they wanted to, not because they felt entitled to what I'd built. My staff surprised me with a framed photo from the grand reopening of the first store post-fire. They'd printed a quote underneath. She didn't burn the bridge. She rebuilt the world on the other side. I didn't cry. Not in front of them. But I did hang it in my new office the next day. Right above my desk. Some wins aren't loud. They don't come with applause or validation from the people you once begged to understand. Some wins are just quiet mornings in a space you created, surrounded by people who respect it. And you? That's where I am now. Still standing. Still building. And finally free.
Thanks for watching. If this story made you think, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. See you in the next one.